Okay, so you're about to watch part 2 of our little video series on how to remove fences. And the particular fence you're going to look at now is a plain wire fence where the fence wire has gone through the holes in the posts. Okay, so that's what you're going to be watching. Before you actually go out and start taking down a fence though, we strongly advise, if you haven't already watched part 1, that you actually watch part 1, because that covers a big overview on pulling out fences, including a lot of safety issues, and safety is of prime importance when you're doing this job. Okay, I hope you enjoy watching it. Bye. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here are fences where the fencing wire, it's plain wire, and it goes through a hole in the fence post. We're here at Charles Darwin Reserve. There's quite a few kilometres of this to pull out, and there are hundreds of kilometres of fence like this to pull out at Hamlin. So if you feel like volunteering, I'm sure you would be most welcome. Anyway, with this sort of fence, these posts can either be wooden like these are, or sometimes they're star pickets. But the whole point of this sort of fence is you can't just cut the wire off the post, you actually have to pull it through the post because it goes through the holes. We would recommend that you would only pull through one post at a time, which means that you're actually pulling, well, depending on the fence, because sometimes a post can be quite a distance apart, but generally they're not so far apart. So you're not pulling out great long lengths. The reason though that we recommend only doing one post at a time, well actually there's a number of reasons. Number one, on these older fences, they've often broken and somebody's come along and they've fixed the wire. And what they've done is they've put a knot in it. So, and you can't get a knot sort of this big through a hole this big. So you're going to have to cut the wire anyway. The other thing is, often the fence posts, once you take the tension off them, this is actually not under too much, actually it is quite under tension here. Once you cut the tension, sometimes the posts fall over. Now if your post is on the ground and you're trying to pull through it, you can generally pull through one, but it's unlikely you'll be able to pull through two, and you end up actually just dragging the post rather than pulling the wire out of it. Because what also happens with these old timber posts is when they get old and they crack sometimes down here, and as you're trying to pull the wire out, it gets stuck in the crack around the hole and it just gets jammed and it's hard to pull out. The other thing that happens is, when these posts get old and they break off, and the person who owned the station before Bush Heritage took over and they wanted to fix the fence line, what they do is they just get another post, they'd stick it, or a star picket, they'd stick it in the ground next to this broken down post, and then they attach the old broken down post to the new post. But sometimes in doing that, they actually attach it at a slight angle. So the holes, instead of running parallel to the fence line, are slightly skew. And they're really hard to pull out because you're trying to pull against the parallel. So if you're trying to pull through two fence posts that are skew, you'll have a lot of trouble because you're trying to bend the wire around the hole. If that happens, you need to angle yourself as you're pulling the wire out at the angle of the holes. Anyway, we're going to stop there, we're going to cut the wire, and then I'm going to show you how you pull it through. Okay. Alright. Okay, so we've now come to a new bit of wire that's tensioned, and so it's quite tight, and we've got to, this is how we start off cutting a tensioned wire. So don't just cut tensioned wire, it'll flick back into your face and do you damage, even if it's only lightly tensioned. So what's going to happen is I'm going to hold on to this and Ian's going to cut. That's number one. Number two, I'm holding. Number three, number four, number five. Okay, so that's that cut, and I've got all. If you can just hold on to those, I'll turn that off. Okay, so we've cut this end. Now when you cut the ends, if they're under tension, you'll find that you'll have, you might have a longer bit and a short bit. That's because when the fence was made, each wire is individually tensioned. And I suppose it depends on the fencing contractor as to how much he tensioned each individual wire, but you'll find out that you have longer, some are shorter. Once you start working with the cut wire, then obviously they'll all be the same, but at the start when it's tensioned they can be different. Don't bother trying to line them up and get them all the same length. It doesn't make any difference, and you'll just be, you know, getting yourself frustrated because it's too hard. So, I've got hold of these. Ian's cut the other end of the wire as well. So we've decided on the length. So we've got a post here. I'm pulling through a post, and he's cut this side of the next post. So I've got this now. I have to turn it into a coil. Now, the way you do it is, I'm left-handed, so you need to do it your way, but I grasp like this, I move down, I pull a bit of wire through, this is going to make some noise, I keep hold of it, a little bit more, and now I have a loop about that big, okay? Depending on the wire, because firstly I must say, you're probably wondering why I'm doing all 5 wires and not just one, because you're probably thinking, oh, I'm sure it'd be much easier if you just did one. Surprisingly, it's not easier doing just one, as I found out when we first started doing them. Number one, you've got to roll 5 wires instead of rolling one wire as 5 wires as one. You've got to do 5 rolls. But also, I don't know, but for some reason, when the wires are all together in a group, they sort of stay together better. They're more more willing to roll up. If you've got one wire, it always seems to be less willing to turn into a little roll. Anyway, I don't know why, that's just the way it is. So, what I do, I get hold of this, I get my foot on this here, make sure all the wires are underneath your heel. Cross this over, holding onto this with this hand, I get one of these and I wrap it around. Now, first of all, push it back onto your thumb. That was something I learnt from another volunteer. I was having trouble winding my wire, and he just pointed out that if you push it back onto your thumb, it takes the, and it sort of takes the tension out of the wire also. I'm not quite sure what it is that it does, but it seems to work. Then you're going to wind it round. Don't wind it tight, like a little coil. That's too hard. It's more like a long roll like that. So just wind it onto yourself. Now, if you've got a longer length, because of the tensioning, just take that and tie that up as well. It just gets it out of your way. Now, I've now got to get these wires through the post that's out of your sight, but it's behind me. Got to pull them through. Never walk backwards when you're doing it. There's sure to be something behind you that you'll trip over. Ian and I have chosen a nice open space here to film this. We're not round shrubs and everything. But normally you'd have shrubs and stuff, and you'll walk into something and fall over. So what you do is you get hold of it. Now I like to do it sort of like this, or you can do it like this, whatever, hold it like this. Basically you're going to pull it through, and this is going to make some noise as it's pulling through the hole. I'm going to keep pulling until I've got them through. Now, just also, if by any chance this post that I'm pulling through had fallen over, and Ian was holding it up for me, it's really important, as the person who's holding up the post as the wires come through, that you keep your face averted as the wires come through. Otherwise you might cop a face full of wires, so do be very mindful of that. Okay, so that's now out. It's now a question of just going hand over hand over hand to wind this wire. When I first started, I actually used to wind it sort of like this, until I realised that it's much easier, because you've got far more control of the wires if you wind this way. So just wind it over, and before you know it, you've got a nice length of wire. Now, depending on your fence and depending how far away the posts are, I wouldn't wind more than about 20 metres. I think we've done What have we done here, Ian? About 10? Yeah, we've done about 10 metres. I wouldn't do more than 20, only because you're likely to get it snagged and caught up in things, and it just slows you down. And you know, from experience, we've found that you know, short lengths are easier to roll. You get a nicer rhythm. You know, it just makes the day go quickly. You're not frustrated by knots and things getting caught up and snagged in bushes, and you know, because you're trying to do with a great long length of wire. So that's it. You see, it's not difficult. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about droppers. So droppers are these pieces of metal here that sit between fence posts to keep the wires apart and even. This type of dropper is quite typical. It can be used on all barbed wire or all plain wire, or as in this case, this has got 5 strands of plain wire and 2 strands of barb at the top. Ian and I loved these droppers, and that's actually a joke because we don't like them at all. They're a real nuisance to get off, and it depends, I think, on who put them on. I don't quite know what the process is of putting them on, but basically they're a piece of metal and they have this pin that goes in from the back and then is folded over here to hold this wire in place. Basically what you've got to do is get this pin off. Now you can do it while the fence is upright like this before you cut the wire and take the tension off it. Just experiment. If you come across these, try which is the easiest way for you to get these off, and then stick with it. And to be honest, we've taken the fence down, or some we've found out that they're easy to take off when the fence is down because you can just twist the wire and they pop out. This isn't going to happen with these because they're folded over too much, and others it's best if you leave them upright. With this particular one we've been leaving them upright. So how do you get them off? Again, the choice is yours. You can use these little clippers like this. Sorry, I'll just unlock them. And you can actually, if you're lucky and they're right, you can clip the top of this little folded bit of wire off at the top like that and cut it. Or you can get one of these and you can force this out with a screwdriver and twist it out. If that fails, you can try a pair of pliers and you grab it and you twist it off, and I've done it like that. So you go down and twist the next one off. So clearly that's the best way to get this particular one off. So there's a few options for you. We have come across fences like this where in fact this is the other way around, so it's facing a whole pile of bush. Trying to undo them is just impossible, and all we've done is we've just cut the fence on either side. Speed is of the essence. You can fiddle around till the cows come home trying to get these things off. If it's easier just to cut either side, then do that. What you won't be able to do, or rather should I say, I won't say won't because there'll be an exception to it. What you're unlikely to be able to do is actually pull the wire through this. So if you cut the wire there, well, you certainly won't be able to pull barbed wire through because the barbs are in the wire. But with this plain wire, I can't move that. It's really fixed onto this post. That's the purpose of it. So anyway, so that's this type of dropper. There are many other types of droppers, but these are the ones that we're showing you, A, because they're here, and B, because they're actually the trickiest to get off. Okay, on to the next section. Okay, we've tested this little video about pulling a fence through a, pulling a plain wire fence through posts that have got holes. We tried it out on a couple of guinea pig sort of volunteers, and they pointed out a few things that weren't really clear, and when we look back at the video, they weren't clear. So I'm just going to try and make them a bit clearer. On the section where we're cutting the wire, when you start a fence and you've got fence line that's under tension, usually you're starting the fence at the start of the fence. I know that sounds a bit of a strange way to describe it, but you'll either be at a gate or you'll be at a bend in a fence where it turns a corner, but basically you're going to be at the start of it. So you will be cutting right up against that first post, which is what Ian was doing, except the post was in front and you couldn't actually see it. So you always do that first cut when it's under tension right up against the post, so that there's no spring back, and you're holding onto the fence wire like I did, so that you've got it under control. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing that we haven't made very clear is how you get a nice rhythm going with what you're doing. So with the little video that you watched about about the fence being cut, me rolling the wire, pulling it through the holes, and then finishing off the wire. So what's happened is we've started at fence post 1. We've cut the wires at fence post 1. Ian, or the person who's going to do the cutting, will walk past the second post, because that's the one you're going to pull the wires through, and go to the third post and cut the wires in front of that third post. Then you're going to coil up the wires. So that's what we did. Now, the wires that were cut at the third post, the bit that you haven't rolled up yet, will just be lying on the ground. So you walk along to that third post and start again, except instead of cutting at the start, all you do is you just collect the wires off the floor. Count the wires to make sure that you've got all 5. Don't just rely on what you're looking at. You can sort of, oh yes, pick up the wires and start rolling and realise you've only picked up 4, you've not picked up 5. Same with cutting them. If it's a 5-wire fence, when you're cutting, cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you cut them all. Because it's a bit frustrating when the person's trying to roll them and you've actually missed one of the wires because it's under some debris. So you get a nice roll going, because a nice sort of rhythm going. So you've gone down, you've picked up the wires off the floor, and that post becomes the number 1 post that you had at the beginning. The person cutting walks past the second post, because that's the one you're going to pull through, and goes to the third post and cuts again. You roll up the wire, walk to that third post, which then becomes your first post. I hope all that makes sense, because I don't know how else to describe it. But anyway, good luck, and I'm sure when you get there you'll work it out.